Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. I don't know how you do that. Were you trying to figure it out? 10 fingers equals Thank you. Sometime I'd like for you to do that behind my meditation, which would be wonderful, which we are going to go into a place of meditation now. And like the song said, we are the joy that we have found because of the Christ consciousness within each of us that Ida spoke of during her prayer. And it's like the joy that one of you I was speaking to that is a new grandmother or just had the latest grandchild, the joy that brings. And as Brene Brown talks about, who wrote the book Daring Greatly, which of course is the book that we are kicking off the book study later this week, and I'll do that at Enlighten Cafe on Wednesday night. She says, do not squander joy. Do not squander joy. So as we settle into this prayer and meditation, let's activate joy and not squander it. So I invite you to take a deep breath with me, with your eyes closed if you are willing. Just an opportunity to listen to that still, quiet voice. There is joy there. So settling down into your seat with your shoulders down and back and your feet on the floor, hands in prayer position, just relax into the breath. With the understanding, like it says in Scripture, in Psalms, this is the day that the Lord hath made. Rejoice and be glad in it. Rejoice. No matter what challenges, health challenges, financial challenges, relationship, now is the opportunity to not squander the joy that is there, waiting, calling to each of us. Breathing a little deeper now, recognizing Spirit flowing through each of us, calling our truth, knocking on the door, the truth that we really are, living from truth from this place. We now get a chance to breathe in true joy, the essence of who we really are. The essence that is a way of life, a result of a living and just loving life in a constructive way. Joy is magnetic, contagious, infinite. In that infinite joy, we can bring a picture to our mind of something that brought us quite happiness. What was that? That experience. Bring a picture of it into your consciousness now. Breathing into that joy, sensing the way it feels in the body. Each time we engage in prayer, we can bring this energy of joy, enthusiasm into our life at any given moment. Make the decision. Make the decision for a fulfilling life, a life that flows with ease. Give yourself permission to follow your excitement. It really can be that easy to follow your excitement because God is there also. I express the joy of living now. Affirm that with me. I express the joy of living now. Continue to breathe deeper with each inhale, joy coming into your heart. In each exhale, sending joy out to everyone in this room and beyond into the world. In the sacred and holy silence. Awareness in the silence. It's where the magic is, where joy always waits. We claim our joy now. Thank you, God. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Amen and amen. Good morning. I hear a couple coughs, and at least last week we were bundled in blankets in here, and this week I see a couple of you in short sleeves. What's going on? Joy, that's what. Texas is going on. Very nice. And I see that many, and by the way, wouldn't it be great to have the stand-up bass every Sunday in here, and the Roomba, I'll say it right, a Roomba on stage every week. And I see some of our divine sisters still trickling in just a little bit, which is quite impressive that you made it here after the epic retreat that you've been on, right? So congratulations. I know there were over 40 of you, and you were basking in joy in the ocean, apparently, because of what I see on your name badge there. The ocean of consciousness, anyway. Possibilities. The ocean of possibilities, which include joy. Correct. Outstanding. Great to see all of you. And I have a sister that's here that I call her my sister, and I call her many things, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But I just want you to come up here for a second, June. Come up here. She goes by many names. You can say June Doon, Joan Doan, or my favorite, June Bug. Yes, come on over here. Come on over here, girl. Yeah. Let me give you a mic. I might have you say something.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike. Now, she personality here. Now, June, of course, heads up our anything food-related, potluck, common grounds, and you've been doing this ministry, I call it. It really is a ministry because so many people connect through food together, and people that ordinarily maybe wouldn't meet get to meet because of a lot of service that you provide. And how long have you been doing this? For a minute, right?
16 years.
16 years. 16 years. Hold it up to you.
Hold it up to my... Okay.
16 years, that's incredible. Now, you look like you love it, but do you love it, and if so, why?
Oh, my God, I love it. I love Common Grounds. Oh, I love Common Grounds.
And why? Why is that?
I used to think I had no creative, artistic abilities at all. And Keva Ward showed me some things to do on platters. And I don't just put those things on platters for you guys back there in Fellowship Hall. I create those platters. They're beautiful. I love the kitchen.
Creative. Your creative power, creating a creative platter. Very
yes, good, yes, I am.
And so, is there anything? Don't keep backing up. I'm just trying to let these folks see you, because
okay.
Otherwise, Alan will say I couldn't even see her. So, what can we do for you? Could you use any help at all?
Oh yes, I need volunteers. I need volunteers for Common Grounds. It is one week a month, And it is so much fun. We go back there. They had to get a door for the kitchen because we make noise back there. We laugh. We have
I was
so
going to
much
start
fun.
having the 9 a.m. service back in the kitchen. Actually.
Yeah, because we have fun back there. It's a blast. You get back there and you start slicing and dicing and creating and dancing and telling about your week, and we just have a great time. It's a wonderful way to make new friends. We're a family, and we try to do things outside of the church, like potluck of our own, things like that, lunches.
Is there one particular Sunday more than others right now that you need help?
Right now, First Sunday.
Sunday.
We have an immediate need for First Sunday, but
Okay.
If you can't do First Sunday and you still want to do it, we can move it around.
So they can just come talk to you today.
Yes.
About signing up. That'd be great.
I'll be in the kitchen.
She'll be in the kitchen. You know where to find her. Very good. Well,
or you can go to the next desk and sign up.
Okay, very good.
Because we all communicate through the next desk.
Well, something to have for your own potluck. I have something for you. So.
Oh.
Yeah, a little surprise. It's all the way from Italy.
Oh.
Yeah, look at that. See, it says olives from Sicily. So it's got to be, and there's artichoke, bruschetta, and lots of fancy, smancy things in here for you. So please give June Doan, our miracle worker in the kitchen, a big hand.
Oh. Thank you. Wow.
Love you.
I love you too.
Thank you. I'll take this. Thank you. I don't think anybody will notice if we share that in the front row during Gregg's talk. And speaking of Gregg's talk, it is a great honor today for me to get to introduce Gregg. Gregg is really our first speaker in our speaker series that we're doing this year. Throughout the year, we have some very talented speakers coming. And the first time I got to hear Gregg was at the Unity Worldwide Conference, where he was the keynote speaker, one of 2 or 3 times that you got a chance to do that. And I found out that Gregg has lived in over 25 places, quite the world liver and traveler, apparently. And in fact, he was just 24 hours ago in Costa Rica. Nice, yes? Not only that, but he did 2-hour classes for 5 days, 7 days, 2-hour classes in a resort in Costa Rica. Poor guy, I'm telling you. And now you're here with us, which is even more awesome. And I also found out that Gregg was born in Mount Sinai Hospital in New York with his fraternal twin brother, and one of your first claims to fame, maybe you were famous day one, was that they weighed the most in their entire history in that hospital. So I thought that was an interesting little factoid there, Gregg. Thank you for sharing me that, along with everything else we got to share yesterday, spending time together. The book Callings, Gregg wrote, and it was a bestseller. And have any of you ever, I guess, felt resistance to answer or to even know what your calling may be? Has anybody ever felt that before? Okay, good. Has anybody here ever perhaps, how can I say this kindly, thought too much? Thought too much. Okay, then this talk is for you today. You're going to love it. I think you are going to resonate with it. And please welcome best-selling author and amazing human being, Gregg Levoy, to the stage.
So, largest set of twins ever born in the hospital. Where did that go? How did that happen? All right, once again, I would just love to thank you, Rachel, again for that incredible performance. That was just absolutely ravishing. Ravishing. Wow. And of course, thank you to the musicians as well. All right, so I'm going to jump in. When I was back in college, I learned a critical lesson about human nature from a psychology class that I took, and it has everything to do with the work that I do today. And so this is what happened. The students in this class pulled a prank mid-semester on the professor, and we based it on what he was teaching us at that point in time, which was called classical conditioning. All right? So most people know about that concept through the experiment using the famous Pavlov's dogs. Ring a bell? They were taught to salivate at the sound of a ringing bell. So, and I also discovered recently that Pavlov's dogs is also the name of a perfume, which I think has very interesting implications for the menfolk. So this is what we did. We took advantage of the professor's habit of pacing back and forth in front of the lecture hall when he delivered his lectures. So what we devised is that whenever he paced over toward the windows, we very subtly pretended to be bored, okay? So we slouched a little bit, we fidgeted, we doodled, we stared vacuously into outer space, which actually by mid-semester it turned out some of us were pretty accomplished at. And whenever we paced over toward the door, again, almost imperceptibly, we now pretended to be interested. Okay, so we sat up a little bit straighter and we started taking notes, fixed in with keen scholarly expressions. By the time that day's class was over, we had our psychology professor glued to the door. It was singularly the highlight of my college years. Half expected that when the bell rang, he would begin to visibly salivate. He denied us that pleasure. But what I saw, I had intuited most of my life. I'd never actually seen demonstrated. What I saw was how incredibly easy it is to condition a human being. Okay, steer them from the outside. And by extension, of course, to be conditioned. And without a single word being spoken. The entire experiment was conducted in pantomime. And I figure if it took us, 50 minutes to condition our psychology professor with a new set of behaviors, a new direction in life, if you will. I tried to imagine the effect on me of a lifetime's worth of that kind of conditioning by the time I was at that point 18. You know what I'm saying? The effect of thousands upon thousands of messages that every one of us got while we were growing up, all right? And that effectively instructed us in the rules of the game. Like what dreams are and are not bankable, what is and isn't possible, how are you supposed to behave in public, what is the reigning definition of success. You know what I'm saying? Who pulls the strings in this game and who dances? And I think the cumulative effect of a lifetime's worth of that kind of conditioning forms effectively a kind of hypnosis. Effectively. I don't even think it matters whether the messages you got are negative or positive, false or true. It's a kind of hypnosis. And every kind of human community, families and schools and churches and corporations and society at large, they all pass along the message that conformity is rewarded. Failure to conform is punished. It's a holdover from natural law, because what natural law tells us is that those who leave the herd to go their merry way have a tendency to get eaten. You know, it's a little bit more complicated in the human arena, but I think the warning stands, the admonition stands. And even though, you know, culture itself would not exist without the glue of conformity, I just think that the individuals in it can tend to pay a pretty steep price for it. And one of the prices that we can pay is losing a working familiarity with who we really are at any point in time, who we really are, all right? So when I think of the notion of a calling to me seems to cut through a lot of this conditioning because it emanates from the part of each one of us that knows what it knows. All right? And very early in the game, I've got a friend in California who told me about a conversation she had with her 5-year-old daughter one day. Her name is Janaea. Wanted to do something mommy apparently didn't think advisable. So her mom says to her, Janaea, honey, I wouldn't do that if I were you. To which Janaea replied, with absolute certainty and innocence, you know? So we know at a very early part of our lives where the line is that where other people leave off and where we begin. That's the place where callings come from, okay? They come from the part of us that knows the feel of integrity in our lives and the feel of its absence. And I don't even mean integrity as a moral issue. I mean it as a psychological issue, being in integrity with who we really are at any point along the line. And calls emanate from the part of us that knows what it's going to take, what kind of decisions it's going to take to sort of make our own lives literally come true. All right? And by the way, I'm defining callings very broadly, secularly, pluralistically. These are the messages, the signs, the signals, the promptings, the urgings, even sometimes the imperatives that come from deep inside your life that tell you what it's going to take to stay true to true north. All right? That's how I'm defining it, very broadly. And the kind of authenticity that I'm referring to when I talk about finding an authentic life, living authentically, I don't even think is the kind of thing you need to discover or go on a pilgrimage to figure out, as much as I think it's something we need to remember in a lot of cases. Remember. Religion both mean exactly the same thing, which is to rebond. The word religare in Latin means to reconnect. You know, I think that's a lot of what the work is. So in other words, it's often something we already know or knew once and then forgot. All right? I ran across a college biology textbook some years ago. No, when I was researching the Callings book, I ran across this college bio textbook, and there was a passage in there that describes what happens in a fertilized human egg as it's growing and developing. And so what they said is that as the cells begin to grow and develop, really early on in that process, these subtle little indentations appear in the round cell ball that begin the process of distinguishing one side of you from the head from the hindquarters. All right? A distinction that seems to be lost entirely on some people. Even 40 years after they're fertilized. But anyway, what it said is that if at this point in the game you were to take a cell from the head and mechanically move it down to the hindquarters, what would happen is that it would migrate right back up. Because it knows, this is what the book said, it knows what it's supposed to become. You can imagine how this would strike you if you were doing research on a book about following your callings. You know, I think at some level, we know what we're supposed to become, individually as well as perhaps collectively, in the sense that there are collective calls, you know, but we know what we're supposed to become. And part of this may be remembering what we already know. And in fact, these days when I hear people use language like this, I feel it in my cells. I feel it in my guts. I feel it in my bones. I feel it in the very fiber of my being. Anymore, I think they're talking literally. I feel it in my cells, all right? So one of the guys that I interviewed for the book is an artist named Howard Ikamoto who lives in Santa Cruz. And he described an interaction he had with a 7-year-old. She came to him one day and asked him, "So, Daddy, what do you do at work?" And he said to her, I work at the college, and my job is to teach people how to draw." And he said that she looked back at him incredulous and said, "Daddy, you mean they forget?" Imagine how that would strike a 7-year-old, that you could possibly forget how to draw, you know. But we do forget. And as for how we go about remembering, let me share this. I did one of my callings weekend workshops at a conference center in Massachusetts years ago. Maybe some of you are from that neck of the woods. You're familiar with the Rowe Conference Center. I get there on a Friday night. and I check in at the desk, and I find out that there's one other workshop being conducted at this conference center the same weekend as mine, and that one was on the subject of tracking. Okay? So I was thrilled by this because it seemed to me that the two workshops being conducted at that conference center that weekend were about the exact same subject, which was the search for signs. All right? In their case, indicating the presence of animals. In our case, the presence of callings, because that's primarily what I do in my workshops. I got a chance to spend some time with the people from that other workshop over the weekend because we shared meals in the dining hall. And what jumped out at me about that group was how excited they were just about the signs of the animals, not even the animals themselves. Frankly, they never saw the damn animals all weekend. It was the middle of winter in western Massachusetts. They never saw the animals, but I've never seen a group of grown-ups so excited about the subject of poop in my entire life. That's pretty much all they talked about all weekend, including at the dinner table, because it was one of the primary signs that they had to go by. But I was inspired by this, okay? I was inspired by it, and I shared it with the people in my workshop by way of saying, if we could cultivate that quality of enthusiasm just for the hunt, all right, just for the act of tracking our lives and paying attention to them and being mindful about them, they will reveal things to us that they're not going to reveal if we're not interested. They're just not going to give up their secrets if we don't offer them some truly devoted curiosity. Okay? So I was really impressed by that experience. So when I think of the interviews that I did for the Callings book, one of the things that jumped out at me also was how many of the people that I interviewed told me that they had a practice of some kind. It was sort of like an inner tracking practice, some kind of self-reflective practice in their life that essentially helped them turn the receivers on. All right? I was impressed by how many people told me that they had something like that. And nothing extravagant. Daily journaling, really common. Meditation, for some people, therapy is a self-reflective practice. Regular short retreats, regular intimate conversation. Dream interpretation was really common. All the religions of the world seem to agree that dreams are one of the primary channels through which the gods talk to the mortals. All right? Let's see. Regular, what else? Artwork done in the service of self-discovery. And any kind of group you belong to whose members get together for the primary purpose of waking up. Okay? Women's groups, men's groups, spiritual groups, mastermind groups, personal boards of advisors, even 12-step groups will do it. Here's a complete non sequitur. The new book that I came out with called Vital Signs about passion, there's a section in the book where I talk about talkaholism. Okay? And one of the guys that I interviewed for that section swore that there's a 12-step group for talkaholics, and he said it's called On and On Anonymous. But that was hysterical. I just thought that was hysterical. And I don't care whether it's true or not, I used it. So one of the things that these dialoguing practices can help you do is, first of all, avoid what the mythologist Joseph Campbell called the great sacrilege in terms of the soul's integrity, which is what he called inadvertence. Inadvertence means not paying attention. Bumbling along, stumbling along, not having the receivers turned on, okay? So these practices can help you avoid that situation, but they can also help you realize that there's not just one calling in there. How many of you guys have a sense that you have more than one call, right? In more than one arena, yes, there's vocational calls, but there's relationship calls too. and moral calls and lifestyle calls and spiritual calls and the ones you got when you were 20, assuming you got them, aren't they really different than the ones you're getting at 50? Different than the ones you're going to get at 75? There's a developmental aspect to them, all right? So they change as we change. So there's another one. In fact, I've seen this happen so many times. People wait and wait and wait for the great big calling. You know, like the burning bush version of this. And they miss all the smaller ones that are right at their feet. These are the fire drills, in my opinion, for the bigger ones. All right? So I want to share with you some of the, who was it? It was the poet Wallace Stevens once said, he captured this idea of looking for the smaller calls. He said, I don't ask for the full ringing of the bell. I don't ask for a clap of thunder. A scrawny cry will do. And there it is. I just love that. That to me is the beating heart of discernment. Discerning our calls is looking at the small, regular calls that we get, not waiting for the big chariots of fire. All right? So let me share with you some of the strategies, some of the channels through which calls make their way to us. All right? They come through things like passions and gifts and intuitions. An intuition is a little call. All right? And they come through dreams. You know the author Tom Robbins? That ring a bell? Another Roadside Attraction, all these crazy novels. He once said, dreams don't come true. They are true. When we talk about our dreams coming true, we're actually referring to our ambitions, which is a very different story. All right? And I ran across an amazing corroboration for that idea at a Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. They did a study of pregnant women, and they found that of the women who had an intuition about the gender of their baby, they were correct 71% of the time, which I thought was impressive all by itself. Of the women who had a dream about the gender of their baby, they were correct 100% of the time. This is a Johns Hopkins University study. 100% of the time. I mean, what does that tell us? You know, we've got access to really deep knowledge in there, and we're sleeping through it most of the time. You know, I mean, my God. Callings come through things like, and this is the level at which I encourage people to look at this stuff. They come through things like song lyrics you can't get out of your head for weeks. You know, anybody ever heard of a novelist named Ann Tyler? Right? She wrote, among other books, The Accidental Tourist, which was made into a movie with William Hurt. So she's a brilliant observer of the dynamics between couples. All right? She says, I can always tell what my husband is really thinking by the tunes that he absent-mindedly hums in the car. So gentlemen, take note, because I'm in the mood for love is really different than tied to the whipping post. You know. So this is the level at which calls often make their way to us. And things like a conversation you overhear in a restaurant that seems like somehow it was addressed to you, or a decision that needs to be made in your life now. Not backburnered another year. You know, some issue that's hanging over your head waiting for resolution. That's a call. All right? How about the patterns that have established themselves in your life by this point in time? All right? Meaning that you've sort of, you know, you've worn a footpath to and from some issue in your life, like lesson you've endlessly had to learn, mistake you continually make, kind of partner you always attract, getting fired again, or even the section of the bookstore you always go into first when you walk into a bookstore. There's calls in those patterns, all right? Where is there friction in your life? Where's there friction, all right? Because it's like in the natural world. Friction happens where changes are trying to take place or are taking place, all right? So where does head argue with heart? Where does faith argue with fear? Where does walk not quite match talk? Where does passion rub up against security? That little drama, right? So where there's friction, there's a call trying to come through there. And they definitely come through the body. I mean, I've got an entire chapter in the Callings book called The Language of the Body, because the word symptom means a sign. That's the origin of the word symptom. A sign of what? The word pathology means the logic of pain. What's the logic? Even if it's psychologic. You know, what is the logic of it? So I'll give you an example. There was a conference that I went to in Albuquerque, New Mexico some years ago, and after my presentation, I'm out in the lobby, and I'm chatting with people, I'm signing books, that kind of thing, and this woman walks up to me, out of the crowd, complete stranger to me, walks up to me and says, "Hey you know why I'm so fat?" Which is not a question you're supposed to answer. And before I could even gather my wits, she answered it. She said, "It's because I have so many stories inside of me I'm not writing down." And it reminded me of something that a guy had said to me the week before in an interview for that book. He's a psychologist named Arnold Mindell. Started something called process-oriented psychology, and a brilliant body-mind guy. He said symptoms are usually dreams trying to come true. There's a hell of an idea when you think about it. Symptoms are dreams trying to come true. And then I had this object lesson in that at the conference in Albuquerque. Here's this woman essentially saying, "I'm so fat because I have so many stories inside of me I'm not writing down." And you know, there is no science or philosophy I'm aware of that could dispute a self-diagnosis delivered with that kind of certainty. You know what I'm saying? The woman knew her body was trying to tell her something, and she knew exactly what it was. She wasn't writing. You know, she knew that her symptom, in the sense that it was a sign, meant something, and she apparently knew exactly what it was. You know, it was the mark of Jonah. Really, it was the mark of Jonah. It was the evidence of her flight from a calling, and one, as she put it, that was literally pushing out from inside of me. Okay, so I just thought I'd share that. One last piece. I used to be a reporter for one of the papers that I worked for was the Cincinnati Enquirer. This is back in my 20s, and one of my favorite stories that I wrote in all the years that I was at the paper was a story about the circus coming to town. All right, this is Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, back when it still had the big tent up. And I went down to the train track because that's how they travel around the country, and I met them, and in a fit of journalistic zeal, and therefore short-sightedness, I let the animal trainer at Ringling Brothers convince me that riding bareback on an elephant at the head of the Barnum and Bailey Circus Parade would add color to my story. And, so contrary to my Jungle Book fantasies about how one gets up on an elephant, you know, that you're sort of airlifted on its trunk, that's actually how I pictured it was going to happen. The only way to get up on the elephant was to use a ladder. And the only way to stay up on the elephant during the parade, I was told, was to hang onto his ears. Okay? So, those of you who have ridden bareback on elephants, you probably know about this already. But elephant ears have a really unpleasant habit of flapping a lot, especially when they're hot. And it was midsummer, and so I'm up on the top of this elephant, and I'm wearing my business clothes. You know, you have to picture I'm the first thing anybody sees in this parade. First of all, I'm wearing my business clothes because he sprung this idea on me at the last second, and my pants are scrunched up above my knees, with the black socks. It was just a fashion tragedy all the way around. And again, I'm the first thing anybody saw on that parade. I know I did not capture the theme of the show. You know, Ringling Brothers, the greatest show on earth. Pretty sure I captured another one of P.T. Barnum's famous themes, though. There's a sucker born every minute. I think I got that one. But in looking back on this experience and on what I have learned since then about what's involved in following a call, that experience has a lot in common with it, all right? In the sense that I was caught by surprise and carried off by something much bigger than me, all right? In the fact that it was thrilling and nerve-wracking at the same exact time, and in that the elephant couldn't have cared less. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I've discovered an unsettling truth. My soul does not seem to care what price I have to pay to follow my calls. Frankly, this seems like a design flaw to me, or something. I know it's not, but it seems that way. It seems like it ought to care. But my happiness, my security, my vanity, my popularity don't seem to matter to it. It's not interested in whether I become rich and famous. It's not interested in whether I live a comfortable life. It's not even interested in whether people like me or not. But what does seem to matter is hanging on to the elephant. That does seem to matter. The willingness to go for the ride, right? The big ride, I mean the one that ensures that someday, if your life happens to be flashing in front of your eyes, at the very least, it will hold your interest. You know, that much at least. So I just want to say that in closing, that in helping to ensure that it does hold your interest, I just want to mention that the workshop this afternoon, starting at 1, is a very hands-on opportunity to explore what your life is calling for from you at this juncture, in any arena, all right? Whether it's vocation or relationship or creativity or spirituality, right? It's a hands-on chance to explore the question, what is trying to emerge in my life right now? What wants to happen? What does my life force want from me right now? So I hope you'll come. And thank you, James, so much for inviting me, and thank you guys for having me. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.